Great morning. This is Dr. Cunningham, and I'd like to have a very real and honest conversation with you all for a moment. I'm going to start with the caveat that I am a Christian woman. I believe in the Bible, in the scriptures. I am also a very practical, compassionate, and understanding person. So, the discussion we're about to have today is regarding abortion. And I must say, and I'm going to make it clear from the beginning, that I am pro-choice. Again, I recognize with consideration of the Old Testament, there is very clear 10 commandments. Yet, we are also a New Testament church, which means after the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, essentially there has been a blood-washed situation for the sake of individual sins and opportunity for forgiveness, for grace, and for mercy. Now that's the only religious statement that I'm going to make for the remainder of this discussion, because the reality is, since 2003, I've been working with families. And I've worked with families, whether they are family units, single parents, and also young adults. The majority of these individuals whom are going to request abortions are requesting because they are either unwanted, unprepared for pregnancies. Now, there are isolated cases, yes, where it's because of rape, it's because of molestation, or because a mom is unable to carry a child to term, that they would rather abort. But I'm not even speaking about those particular cases. Even the majority of the cases that were once aborted before the laws, at least in Connecticut, that law has been essentially has been eradicated with regards to abortion, that these were people, women, who had, whether it was consenting or unconsenting sex with another male, made a child. And if not given the opportunity to abort, if they are unprepared to take care of a child, are bringing a child into the world that can eventually either be in a family situation where they may be in a single parent home, possibly raised by their grandparents, possibly be given over to the state as a ward of the state because they recognize that they are unable to take care of a child, which means a child that will go into the foster care system or potentially be adopted. Now, thank God for those whom are willing to adopt. At the same time, let's look at the statistics. Just in 2021, foster care population, so we're talking about children, 391,098 children within the United States. Now the number has decreased as far as those who are in foster care, but we cannot negate the fact that if a child is being born in a situation with parents who are unprepared or unfit to be parents, they end up in the system. And if they don't, unfortunately, they are living in environments that are unhealthy for them. So what else can we do? If we don't allow people the space and time to make their own decision regarding what they're going to do with a life that they're going to be responsible for, are we going to then have to create a new system that really can take care of these children? Now, if we're looking at it from the context of the biblical context of the Old Testament, during those times, children were prepared for. If individuals were having children, making babies, they knew what their finances were. Either they had a certain level of affluence where it was expected for them to be able to make children for the sake of continuing the family name, but they had the finances and the wherewithal and the ability to take care of their children. Or even if they were amongst those who were of the working class, they made babies in order to have additional working hands. So it's a very different situation when we're looking at it from the context of history and where things are today, where the majority of these cases once were aborted were because they were unplanned for. There are studies that show that only 50% of women actually want to have children, which means only 50% of them have the mindset of even having a child. Doesn't mean that they prepared to be a parent. And we're not talking about just preparation financially. We're talking about psychologically, emotionally, having the time. I provide parenting education. Can I tell you how many parents I've met with after having 4 or 5 children were sitting in parenting education classes and did not have the skill sets to parent their children, and they're on the 4th or 5th one. A lot of what people are learning regarding parenthood is actually happening through their own family of origin. And thank God for those whom are parented by great parents. But for those who are parented by abusive parents, neglectful parents, parents who turned a blind eye to their children being molested, usually do the same or are hypervigilant and become helicopter parents, which can have the same effect as not parenting their child at all. So all I'm saying is, I'm not here to knock parents, because the toughest job on earth from my perspective is being a parent. At the same time, are our parents preparing themselves to be parents? And are they being supported by a community that gives them the skill sets and the wherewithal to know how to improve upon the parenting skills that they have been shown through their own family of origin? And then also to be the very best that they can as a person, because the reality is the stability of a person translates into how they will interact with their own children. So people will have their own thoughts, perspectives regarding how parenting works, whether it's based on what they don't want to see happen because of what happened to them, or because of how they were reared. They utilize particular skill sets and model them within their own families. So, is it an easy question just to say, because the Bible says so, that if you take a child from the womb, because at conception they are alive, that is murder? There are children that are alive today that were unplanned, and unfortunately, their spirits were being broken by the very people who brought them into this world. So would you rather them not be brought into a world that could potentially just abuse them? Or do you bring them into the world to live a life, at least in their early stages, where there's trauma, where there's no secure attachment, because they have a parent who is unable to emotionally and psychologically care for them, or unwilling to because of the fact that they didn't even want the child in the first place? Possibly women who were sleeping with a man, trying to keep a man, so they were having unprotected sex, made a baby, hoping that the man would stay. And the reality is that the man walked away as soon as he realized he would have to step to the plate to handle the responsibility of fatherhood, and he couldn't handle it. So then he ends up in a single parent home, or that little baby in a single parent home, with a parent who's upset that the man didn't stay, and sees the child only as a burden because they thought that they would be able to utilize that child as a bargaining chip to be loved by a man who could never love them in the first place. So we must consider the circumstances as they are, not from the perspective without consideration of the context of what's happening in our world. And then, as believers, we are not so heavenly orientated or spiritually orientated without being practically and earthly relevant. We must be able to balance it, where we hold love and compassion and peace that God talks about within the Bible, especially in the New Testament, the Christ-like way, and then also being able to manage the reality of people's lives. And if we are going to stop certain patterns and cycles through generations, then that means we must get to the root cause of these situations. People who want to be loved are doing what they need to do in order to get the love that they want, and are creating little ones that they did not plan on. Now, are they able to truly love? No, because their perspective and their definition of love is not true, pure, godlike love. God's love is kind. It does not keep track of wrongs. It's not boastful. Are we understanding? There's a different way of being able to approach people without us bringing dogma into the situation, without bringing judgment, so that we can be a benefit to people's lives and to shift their hearts and minds with regards to what family means, what healthy relationships mean. So I'm going to recommend that you all purchase my book. I'm Dr. Norja Cunningham. You can look it up on Amazon. The Nature of Relationships, Prosperous Relationships with Yourself, Family, Friends, and Community. Because when we understand how to have healthy relationships, there's not going to be a need for abortions, because people will have appropriate boundaries and know when it's time to say, let's hold off. Or how about if we are going to have a child, we're going to plan for it. You know why? Because I know my worth so much that I'm going to make you wait for me until we get married, because I'm going to have that ring. We're going to get married, and then we're going to plan for our child, because we want to make sure that our child has a stable life where we're able to bring as much as possible to them so that they can be successful as adults. How about that? So, healthy relationships, healthy environments created by healthy parents, by healthy communities. We can make a difference, but let's do the work where it matters, not where we can judge, but where we can be the difference. Y'all have a great day.